Most people think fighter pilots have superhuman reflexes. Wrong. They're not thinking faster than you. They're thinking earlier. You react, they anticipate. You get overwhelmed by decisions. They operate calmly at 600 miles per hour. Missile incoming, radio screaming, fuel dropping. And they don't freeze. Why? Because they use a mental operating system you were never taught. It's called the OODA loop. And once you understand it, you'll see why you've been losing at work, school, business, without even realizing it. I'm about to show you exactly how it works. And by the end of this, you'll never make decisions the same way again. Chapter 1. You react, they cycle. Most people wait for clarity. They want perfect information. Complete data, total certainty. Idiot. By the time you have certainty, you've already lost. Colonel John Boyd, U.S. Air Force strategist studied air combat and discovered something brutal. The pilot who cycles decisions faster wins. Not the strongest, not the smartest. The fastest decision loop. OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, act, simple. But here's the catch. Most people get stuck at observe. You gather information forever. More research, more YouTube videos, more comparison, paralysis. Fighter pilots observe quickly. Then they orient. This is the key. Orientation means interpretation. They don't just see the enemy jet. They interpret angle, speed, intent. Pattern recognition, sound familiar. Chess masters do it. Surgeons do it. Pilots do it. They compress chaos into meaning. You stare at data. They see structure. Then they decide. Fast, then they act. Here's the brutal part. They immediately loop back. Observe again. Adjust again. Act again. Continuous cycling. You decide once and hope it works. They iterate mid-air. That's why they feel faster. They aren't. They're looping quicker. Want to apply this? Shorten your decision loops. Stop researching for weeks. Make a small move. Launch version 1. Take the practice test. Publish the draft. Then observe feedback. Cycle. Speed beats perfection. But here's the problem though. Speed without calibration is chaos. Chapter 2. They train in uncertainty. You practice in comfort. Silent room. Predictable environment. Low stakes. Then real pressure hits. You crumble. Fighter pilots train in chaos. Simulated dogfights. Unexpected variables. System failures mid-flight. Psychologist Robert Bjork calls this desirable difficulty. When conditions are unstable, your brain encodes adaptability. Comfort creates fragility. Stress creates flexibility. Research from the U.S. military shows that scenario-based training dramatically improves retention and response time compared to passive instruction. Because your brain learns context, not just content. You memorize formulas. Pilots simulate disasters. You reread slides. They rehearse failure. If you want to think faster, train unpredictably, studying for exams. Practice with time pressure and distractions. Learning to negotiate role-play hostile scenarios. Coding. Debug broken systems, not clean tutorials. Your brain must learn to operate under noise. Otherwise, it panics when noise appears. But here's the thing, though. Even stress training isn't enough. Because most of you misinterpret information. Chapter 3. They control bias. Orientation, remember that word. That's where battles are won. Boyd argued that orientation is shaped by culture experience and mental models. In other words, your biases decide your outcomes. You see what you expect to see. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. You filter data to protect ego. Pilot sees radar signal. He doesn't assume, he verifies. He asks, what else could this be? Second-order thinking. Most people jump to first conclusion. Market is bad. Exam was unfair. Client is difficult. Maybe. Or maybe you misread the signal. Elite decision makers build mental models. Charlie Munger calls it a lattice work. Pilots build internal simulations. If I climb, he dives. If I bank left, he anticipates. You make one prediction. They simulate branches. You want to upgrade this? Before any major decision, ask, what are 3 alternative explanations? What's the worst-case scenario? What assumption am I making? That question alone increases cognitive flexibility. You don't lose because you're slow. You lose because you're biased. Hit subscribe before you forget that. We fix blind spots here. But here's the problem, though. Even perfect decision loops break under fatigue. Chapter 4. They manage cognitive load. At 30,000 feet, overload equals death. Pilots use checklists, simple ones, clear ones. Why? Because working memory is weak. Psychologist George Miller showed it holds about 7 items at once. Under stress, even less. You try to juggle everything in your head. Emails, deadlines, goals, ideas. System crash, pilots externalize memory. Checklists, procedures, flowcharts. Atul Gawande wrote about this in the Checklist Manifesto. Experts use simple systems to prevent simple mistakes. You think systems are for beginners. Wrong. Systems are for professionals. Want to think faster, reduce cognitive load. Write decision criteria before emotional moments. Create templates. Standardize repeated tasks. Free mental bandwidth for strategy. Clarity beats complexity. But here's the final advantage. The unfair one. Chapter 5. They act before they feel ready. You wait for confidence. They move with incomplete information. Why? Because action creates clarity. Boyd's core insight wasn't just speed, it was disruption. If you cycle faster than your opponent, you disrupt their orientation. You create confusion. In business, this is iteration speed. In exams, this is practice frequency. In life, this is bias toward action. Jeff Bezos calls it type 2 decisions. Reversible decisions should be made quickly. Most of your decisions are reversible, but you treat them like permanent surgery. Overthinking small moves, delaying execution. Pilots can't delay, fuel burns, missiles fly. You don't need urgency from danger. You need urgency from opportunity. Make small decisions fast. Adjust faster, loop continuously. Observe, orient, decide, act. Again, 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 that's the system. Now recap. They shorten decision loops. Train under chaos, challenge bias. Reduce cognitive load, act before certainty. You wait, overanalyze. Protect ego, clutter your brain, delay action. And then you wonder why others move ahead. It's not intelligence, it's loop speed. But here's the problem though. Even if you master decision speed, if you're pursuing the wrong objective, you'll accelerate in the wrong direction. Fast mistakes compound faster. That's why I made the next video breaking down how to identify the exact 20% of actions that actually move your life forward. Because once you combine ruthless prioritization with fighter pilot decision loops, it's almost unfair.